like with this project, we're thinking about ways that we can support people like us that are looking to make the best of their life, right? And with the understanding that when we talk about life, we tend to break it up into different segments, right? And we focus on hobbies, or we focus on our careers, or our family, or relationships, right?
Right.
But I think a big thing that we agree on is that life itself is not segmented. It is your life. And where all those different situations and roles and relationships bump into each other and overlap, that's where all the work happens. A lot of the work happens. And where we need to put a lot of our attention in that space, that a lot of interesting and hard things can happen. We've been thinking about, like, how do we navigate that? How do we help people navigate that for themselves? We don't have the right answers for other people, but I think we can help other people find the right answers for themselves.
Yeah.
Just like we're trying to do for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been thinking about. Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
You're a little squeaky.
Am I? I was hoping you couldn't tell.
No, everyone's going to be able to tell.
I got a summer cold.
Yeah.
But it's working through.
Yeah. You don't really let it bug you.
Well, I try not to. I will say I'm at the phase of it that I'm just ignoring that it's actually happening. I'm like, nope, not real.
Just happy I didn't get it yet.
Knock on some sort of wood.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. What's going on with you? Us.
Gosh, we've had a busy couple weeks. My sister was in town. We had our annual family nickel hunt. We had a mini pool party. We went to a really cool dinner pairing at 45th Parallel, which is a local vodka distillery and bourbon distillery. Spirits.
They did some signature cocktails with spirits that they make.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite?
Probably the quail.
Okay.
It had couscous with it and like a nice bourbon glaze. Did it have like apricot in it or something too? Or it was something
like an apricot glaze, yeah.
Something about the sweetness of it balanced it out and had a little.
I gave you some of my quail.
Yeah. But it had like some hotter peppers that were just a little kind of peppery, but they had a little kick to them.
Yeah.
That was the most balanced one, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite dish?
My favorite thing was the gimlet flight. So they had a normal gimlet, like original.
Classic.
Blueberry, and then one that had sea salt and was it apricot or peach? I like a gimlet. It was really good.
Yeah. My cousin was in town too at the same time. So got to visit with her and her daughter.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of kind of family time and relaxing and also going and doing things.
I think one of my highlights was when we went out with my sister and her husband for parents' night out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a tradition, but whenever we're together and my parents are here too, we try and sneak out and get away for a parents' night out, and they get to watch all 4 grandsons, ranging from ages 7 to 15. That was probably my highlight of the last couple weeks. Earlier today, I was out on our deck enjoying kind of some of the sun.
Yeah, you got sunburned.
I did get a little sunburned. But I was enjoying the sun and reading and just hearing the birds and all of that. And you came out and started talking to me about recording later. And you had some really interesting ideas about what we could talk about today. And so I want to hand it over to you. Where are we going to go today? And I'm really excited about jumping into the concepts you were talking about and teeing up for us.
For the last several months, I've been taking time on Sundays to kind of set myself up for the week ahead. I, sometimes on a call, sometimes by myself. Talked about that a little bit on here, I'm sure. And part of it is reflecting on the previous week and then kind of scheduling out my week and just seeing what is on the schedule already and where I have time. Part of that process that's super helpful is the reflection, and kind of like we talked about before, like how I don't necessarily celebrate wins, and something for me to acknowledge and work on. I think that's a part of it, which is like, don't just keep going and going and going. Actually take a little pause and reflect. And also, it helps you kind of build these little wins of like, even if it's just on my little calendar, like checking off that I did these things. And so today, it's not the first time in the last week or two that themes have come up, like accountability, holding yourself accountable, right? And that is better than having to be perfect. And when you don't accomplish something, it's good to have grace with yourself and grace with others, right? On your team. It works for yourself and it works for like people you work with or people in your life, right? So I came out to you and I kind of all jazzed up because I see a power in that. Is there's like an ownership of, I'm going to hold myself accountable and I'm going to do the things I say I'm going to do, right? On another hand, I've also been like, oh, I gotta have grace with myself and I gotta be patient, and it's okay to not always have wins, and like it's okay to fail. So these are really two things that I didn't really think about together, but I thought about them often. Today, it kind of clicked that they really go together very well, and that if I were to combine them and think of them more in tandem, that it's like this multiplier. And so I was really excited about that. And then I probably like rambled on about some other stuff too. So that's like one thing. And with that is also work that we've been doing in the background and thinking about what are we aiming for and where do we see ourselves going and how are we seeing ourselves helping others. In that process where we've been ideating and thinking, and we're looking at like all these like little buckets of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking about adding the accountability and the grace together, person on the call is like, well, it sounds like you're making a recipe. Oh, that's what we were doing when we were talking and thinking of like, what are we making here? And I used to work in a kitchen a little bit, and we like to cook and stuff. And so I was like, oh, it's really interesting. Like, we're trying to think of like, what are the ingredients for creating like a full life, a meaningful life, right? What are those recipes? Where are those ingredients, right? Yeah. So that's been like just flowing around in my head. And then those are kind of the words that came up. And I came up to you and I was like, so what are the ingredients that make a full life for you? Like, because I think that's kind of what we're looking for, because we've been talking a little bit about how all those different ingredients interact and how it takes work to go in between these different things that we add to our life. And I just thought it might be interesting to maybe talk about it.
Yeah.
Something might come up that hasn't come up yet.
When you talk about a recipe, that is a good analogy for how we're thinking about things. I've been spending time in the garden. One of the things in my garden is rhubarb. And I like to make rhubarb pie. To do the rhubarb pie, I have a recipe with different ingredients, but it's not just a list of ingredients. I have to also have instructions or like those steps. Like you were talking about accountability. And so when I'm thinking about this recipe analogy, I'm thinking about the different components of your life being the ingredients, but then that accountability piece is the amount of time it's in the oven.
Yeah.
And maybe the grace is your ability to are you going to bake it golden brown? Are you going to underbake it a little? Those sort of things to kind of be like, okay, I underbaked it. I didn't quite like that. Next time I'm going to try this way. So I guess all I'm trying to say is I see how all of the things that you're pulling together really match nicely. And I like that idea of comparing it to a recipe.
So let's talk about it, but we don't have to keep being metaphorical about it.
Don't need to talk about rhubarb pie?
No, we can talk like about the whiteboard stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Or whatever comes to mind with it. Because like the metaphor helps. It helps me too to think about it like that, because having the recipe doesn't mean it's going to turn out the same every time, right? Like you're just saying, and the different applications that you choose to use are going to give you different outcomes, right?
Right. As you're saying, it doesn't turn out the same every time, sometimes because of the context too that you're in, right? If you're at high elevation, it always says at high elevation, bake it differently.
Right. Well, and
Right.
and so you need to be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
That's like another thing that I keep bringing up when we're talking is awareness feels like a really big piece of the work that we're working through and trying to like develop. Like with this project, we're thinking about ways that we can support people like us that are looking to make the best of their life, right? And with the understanding that when we talk about life, we tend to break it up into different segments, right? And we focus on hobbies, or we focus on our careers, or our family, or relationships, right?
Right.
But I think a big thing that we agree on is that life itself is not segmented. It is your life. And where all those different situations and roles and relationships bump into each other and overlap, that's where all the work happens. A lot of the work happens. And where we need to put a lot of our attention in that space, that a lot of interesting and hard things can happen. We've been thinking about like, how do we navigate that? How do we help people navigate that for themselves? We don't have the right answers for other people, but I think we can help other people find the right answers for themselves.
Yeah.
Just like we're trying to do for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been thinking about. So my idea was, well, what are all those parts to you? Like, what do you like to focus on? Because when you focus, we break it up, right? But when we're living, it's just kind of like, we're just going. Sometimes you're just going.
Yeah.
And then only in reflection, like I was doing this morning, you take the time and you kind of segment the things. And I say, okay, I need to make sure I focus on family this week. And I want to focus on my creativity and making sure I get some exercise, focus on my health, things like that. So what comes up for you when we think about that kind of stuff?
I think of those three primary things you were talking about. Career, I think about family, or relationships, right?
A lot of different relationships.
Yeah. Then I think about the things that bring me joy. And how can all those things coexist, knowing that sometimes I'm leaning more into one of those areas than the other, but that none of them are fully not there. That might not make any sense.
Well, like when we were talking the other day,
Yeah.
I was kind of bringing up the thing that would happen a few years ago. Like you'd be at work, I'd be at work. And one of us would have to get them to one of their events or their sports or something.
Yeah.
And so while you're at work, you're thinking about what you have to do after work. And when you're driving home, you're thinking about what you didn't get done at work, or what I have to do this weekend with these people or those people or family or friends, Kind of like the drive time is also like that. It's like a metaphor for like that space in between if I'm at home or at work or with family or doing my hobby. It's like when you're traveling between those things, that's when you have a little time to think. And how do you not get distracted by thinking about one thing when you're supposed to be going and doing the other, or vice versa? And it kind of all seems like it's all at once, or you ignore something and then that suffers, and I'm maybe overcomplicating it, but it's just one of those things where I remember it used to be like a time crunch and a little bit of a struggle to try to get that all done. And I don't think the answer is ignoring it. I think the answer is making some time and space to design your path or how you're going to go from A to B or.
Oh. I think the hard thing right now for me as we're talking through it is because we're currently in this ideating stage around this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we talk about a lot, but it's also something we don't feel like we fully arrived to full knowing, or I don't know if that's how you say it, but
Well, that's why I think it's kind of fun to talk about, is because we're kind of capturing the process versus, like, we're not gurus, right? Like, and that's not what we're not trying to say we know everything about how to have the best life ever, but I'm going to try to figure out how to have the best life for me, you know?
So one thing that we were talking about on Friday was around when relationships and hobbies, when there's that space in between where there's some things that we both enjoy doing together as a couple, as a family. Then there's some things that I like to do that it's just not your thing, and vice versa.
Like a Venn diagram, right?
Yeah, we're thinking kind of, because there's some overlap. Because there's like you and I sitting, listening to music, watching shows, going on a date night. Those are overlapping. We know that it's good for our relationship and for us as a couple to enjoy that time and space with each other. It also allows us to unplug, re-energize, de-stress, and just find pure enjoyment. And so I think that's kind of that special space sometimes when we can share that. But I also think there's times that it's really good for me too to have some things that I just do. It's kind of my time, like gardening. Like I spent today getting my final peppers in the ground and pots and things like that. I love spending that time outside, hearing the birds. You know this, but that's something that I still think you need both of those things, where doing things that you enjoy by yourself and doing things you enjoy with each other or with other people, those things can be fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but I think when we were starting out in our relationship, like I would get bored if I had to do things alone, because I thought being part of a couple meant always doing the things together as a couple.
Yeah. That's fun. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, though?
I'm giggling because then we soon realized that Keith needs alone time to recharge.
Yes. No, but I mean, I think that was maybe an expectation that I had from what a relationship should be, using air quotes, right?
Yeah.
Is that I should want to spend all my additional time with you, and we should both enjoy doing the same things that each other enjoys doing. I will learn to like the stuff you like, even though I don't like it now, and vice versa. I'm just saying, I feel like we've grown through that. So I don't feel like that anymore. Do you feel like that? Or did you ever feel like that?
No, I don't think I ever felt like that. I mean, we've talked about, like, we're codependent for sure, but I definitely like having things that I can do by myself that are for myself, filling the cup, right?
Yeah,
kind of stuff. Like it doesn't have to be a team sport all the time. And that's, like, I'm fortunate to have that. I think that's possible because we do the work to make sure that we're a good team and we're good partners. And I think we show up better for each other when you get to go garden and have time to yourself. It's just like, if I have time woodworking or with music or something creative, or not even doing anything. Sometimes I just sit and listen to music or write, things like that. I think it's what makes a life more robust. Being able to be content in different arenas. And that takes a lot of work, I think, though.
We talked a little bit about some of the overlap between that joy and wellness and relationships, family, kind of going the other way from a relationship to work or career. You were talking a little bit about this earlier, about how there's some of that overlap and tension sometimes between the responsibilities of work, responsibilities of family, almost feeling like you're not doing either one really well. That's not exactly how you put it, but
no, but that's how you, that's how you
I feel like that quite a bit. It's a working mom in particular.
And I think if I felt that way, I would just brood and just be cranky. I wasn't aware enough, or maybe in tune enough to be like, oh, I'm cranky because I'm not fulfilled at work, and I'm also not feeling like I'm doing well enough job, like as a father, like I'm just cranky, you know. So it took work to kind of get in touch with that on a little deeper level, I think. Whereas like you would talk to me about those hard feelings that you had about work is tough, and so I put more work in, and then I miss out on stuff at home.
That's always been the real tension for me of how do I show up and not miss out, but also go after what I want to do for a career. I think I'm striking a pretty good balance with that, or have more recently. It was harder when the kids were younger, in particular, because they don't understand as much. Like if mom's not there at my program, or...
Well, they might not even know or care
in
a way, or not communicate it like me. Like, I mean, I was being childish and not knowing how to communicate how I was thinking or feeling, right? Mm-hmm. That's the hard part, is like, am I letting somebody down?
Right.
And then you feel like you're letting yourself down, right?
Right.
That tension, or like the things that trigger those responses, they stop us from moving forward. Like if you're kind of in that, it's almost like a cycle of just spinning, and like, I mean, that's the work, is being in that cycle of maybe self-doubt or not feeling fulfilled. Being able to be aware of that is a really good first step that you had, at least. When I think what I just communicated was like, I wasn't even aware that maybe I was feeling that way. I would just be cranky. Mm-hmm. Where I couldn't articulate it. Just in a bad mood, So that's probably like something I would say. Or, I'm fine, It's fine,
I know when the F word comes out that's not good.
And so I think there's something there about, and I've said this before, but it's like how the pivot out of that spiral or cycle. How do you pivot or it's a reframe, I think. And I think that's really key. And that's maybe something for us to explore. We probably wrote that down and talked about that a little bit too the other day, of how reframing things is powerful and can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think you and I have reframed, at least for us, especially around those two kind of parts of our lives that overlap, the work and family. We've talked a lot about, because you've been kind of, I don't know if lead parent is the way to say it, or you've been the parent that typically drops the kiddos off, picks them up, making sure they're getting to practice, things like that. Where I am the parent that has kind of a beyond an 8 to 5:30 job, or 8 to 4:30 job, that my job doesn't have like those hourly boundaries necessarily.
Yeah. And
And so that means that it can be fairly intense and demanding at times. And it can be typical sometimes, but it's more often than not.
This is exactly what I was going to say.
Extending those hours of the day on both ends. But I think early on, you and I don't know if it was early on, but we got to this point where we started reframing our family's experience in relation to work. At least for us, to feel better about it, maybe, is that, or for me, I'll say for me, this is how I reframed it, is that this is an amazing experience that our boys are having growing up, to see their dad be their primary caretaker right now. Caregiver, sorry, not caretaker. Having their dad be their primary go-to person day to day. Also, seeing me as a woman leader really leading, stepping out there and leading. And so I thought, like, wow, that actually is a really great lesson and experience that we are giving our kids without them even knowing it, to see that gender role reversal partially, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big deal to us that it's kind of flip-flopped for us. Like, we feel it. And the fact that it's not that big of a deal to them is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of what we said, is like, they don't know anything different. And that's good. Like, I want them to I want the world to be a little more that way, where it's not weird that mom is in a leadership role and is a big deal at work, and that dad can pick you up and drop you off from daycare. I think it's a bigger deal for us than them as well, I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
And
I think you're right.
I think that's hopefully a good thing.
Yeah.
Just showing how things are shifting and changing.
Yeah. I agree.
So you're talking about the relationship between work and family, right?
Mm.
Or like, say we're talking about hobbies and work, or hobbies and family, or like there's all these different buckets, right, that we can break our lives down into. And something that I want us to think about and explore is these segments that light you up, but navigating between them, right? So like you were just talking about the tension between, am I enough at work? Am I enough at home? Am I doing it right? Is kind of like it boils down to. I think that's where, like we talked about, like Stutz's, like those three things that are certain: pain, uncertainty, and constant work.
Right.
I think traveling between all these little areas of our life, that's the constant work. And there's going to be some pain because there's going to be a joy. You're going to have both. And if you didn't have both, you wouldn't have either, kind of thing. And, the big thing that we kind of laugh about is like, I'm like, why does the uncertainty have to be certain? Like, there's something I've been working on, right? Like mental health and stuff, right? It's like super important, especially in this day and age, that we take care of our anxiety and the uncertainty, and build up the tolerance to it, that we can do hard things, kind of stuff, right? Again, back to like this navigating. I don't have a map to give other people, let alone myself. But my work, I see it, is drawing my own map, figuring out what's working for me. Like I have a compass like inside of me, right? Metaphorical compass of like, I know what feels right and I know what feels wrong and what feels bad. So using that to help me set my aim. And then the real work, I think, is trying to get to where I think I want to go. That just keeps coming up and up. I think that comes easier to you, or you make it look easy. Like I know it was hard. Like when we were talking about you being at work and wanting to be at home for our kids, and feeling like you wanted to be more for them. And I know it was hard, but you did more than you thought, and you did a really good job of doing both, and you still do. Whereas for me, I feel like it's a little harder for me, like to get that. Like you're the initiator. I haven't said that to you in a while, but you are.
An instigator?
Either that too. I'm a little bit more of a surveyor.
Yes.
I'm kind of like, I'm just going to watch. I'm going to surveil and see what's going on. So I got some work to do. And I've been doing some work, or what I call the work, I guess, of getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say the work, what are you putting in the work? What's that mean?
I think navigating between our different roles and situations, that's the work. The feeling like you didn't show up for your kids.
Yeah.
And going to work at the same time. That's
and
hard.
being present.
Yeah, that's hard work.
Yeah.
Coming home and giving your kids the attention that they deserve when you know you have a big presentation the next day, or an email that you know you have to get a response out for. That's work, right? It's a weight, and we have to lift it. I think there's a lot of tools that we can use and develop and get better at having in our tool belt.
Yeah.
For me, it's simple as like box breathing. It's just an example of like that helps me when I'm feeling anxious.
Yeah.
That's why everyone talks about it. Like just do 4-4-4-4,
I guess me, like when I'm doing my morning routine and trying to focus on setting myself up for the day in the best way possible. Of course, everything comes up about, oh, you should check your email on that. Or, oh, is that shipment going to come? Or, child one is waiting for the CDs.
Mm-hmm.
You should follow up and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that email from work. Or, what time do your meetings start? Tomorrow or today? I've started making a list on like a Post-it as those things come up and telling myself, okay, you can check on that, but we're going to stop thinking about it right now because that's not what we're doing right now. Now we're focusing on journaling or planning for the day.
So that right there is a great tool. That's a great tactic to make sure that you're not using your brain for something that's not the best at, which is remembering.
Yep.
And you download that onto a Post-it, and then you start using your brain for processing what you know you're supposed to be doing, quote unquote, right? Those little things, you laugh at me because I'm like, that's like part of the protocol. Like that's the part of the protocol I want to build so that that's just how I operate. And it simplifies those things so that it is how it is. And that takes work. And saying all these little tips and tricks and how to build a practice and a habit is one thing, but then actually executing it and showing up is another. And it's not a coincidence that the more you've done a morning routine, same with me, and journaling and the things that we do, little less stressed than we were 10, 15 years ago with the young kids, right? And it's like, I didn't have a morning routine besides get up and throw the clothes on because I'm running late because I stayed up too late with a crying kid, you know, and I got to get to work and it's dark out, you know. And for me, taking the time to give myself the time, right? And just a little bit more of an investment in checking in with myself, checking in with you. It's really helpful. I think what sparked it is like you kind of downloading out of your brain onto paper. It's the same with like me doing my morning writing and stuff. It really helps to get it down.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not trying to be prescriptive with that. It's just another thing that in theory, all of these things sound great, but in the field, you got to make your own routine that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's good enough for you? You know, what's enough water for somebody? It's different from person to person, you know.
Yeah.
It can be fun and daunting, probably.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
It's true. Sometimes the things that seem difficult or hard are the things that are the most worth doing.
And then you finally do it and you're like, oh, why did I take so long? Like, why did I take so long to take the extra 20 minutes to find that part for the sink and fix it? I could have done that 2 years ago. I just kept putting it off.
Yeah.
You know, it's the uncertainty. Well, what if I do it wrong? That's the narrative in my head. Over the last year, really have made I think I've made a lot of strides in doing the thing that feels uncomfortable and using that as a signal to, all right, man, push through that.
Yeah.
What we're working through, all this rambling that we're doing, is for the sake of that. And how can, like, I want to help as many people as I can to push through and make their life their best life.
Yeah. The way I'm coming to it is I want people to know that they aren't just one part of their identity. They aren't just an employee. They aren't just a mom, a partner, a daughter, a sister, a gardener. They are one whole person. And they can find time for all of those pieces and components in their life in a way that works best for them, that fills them up. So it's interesting because I think we both are compelled to help people and to try and help people draw their own map and follow it because it feels like that's the work we've been doing. And at the same time, you and I are coming at it just from slightly different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for both of us. Well, maybe more helpful for you than me. I'm kidding. I think it's good to have different perspectives.
Life would be boring if everyone thought exactly like you thought.
Yeah, and being able to shift your own is very helpful. Spend a lot of time in my own head. And so if I can shift a little bit and maybe see things the way somebody else does, take that into account, it's really helpful. Sometimes it's easier than others.
Yeah. I'm smiling because you do spend a lot of time in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that, how do I say this? Because you're talking about getting out of your head and being open to kind of what other people's thoughts and ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I think of it as I know how I think about what I'm experiencing, and I have my opinions about it. But how might somebody else see what's happening? Or how might somebody else see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know why I'm in the kitchen doing the things the way I'm doing it. But when I see someone else doing it and it's not quite how I would do it, maybe I can shift my perspective and try to see it either from their vantage point or your vantage point if you were looking at them, like
Sure.
It's empathy, I think, which is kind of squishy to a lot of people.
No, but it's really important.
Yeah.
I was thinking that sometimes when it comes to the ideas of others, sometimes I need to be less susceptible to them.
Oh, yeah.
Or less, I don't know if compliant is the word.
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Accommodating. I
Accommodating.
need to be less accommodating to sometimes.
Less of a pushover, maybe.
Ooh.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
I'm not trying to call you that. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of what it sounds like you're trying to say. Susceptible or accommodating.
Especially when it comes to my own path and journey.
Mm-hmm. Again,
I don't think I'm a pushover. I just think.
I don't think you're a pushover. That sounded like what you were trying to say.
I think what I'm trying to say is sometimes.
You were definitely not a pushover.
I'm not. But sometimes I do think I take into consideration the opinions of other people too much.
You feel the weight of their opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's something I know that over the years I've worked on, but I still have work to do. I think it's good to listen and consider other people. But then when it also comes to your life and your decisions and your path, sometimes you need to make the decisions that are best for you, even if other people don't understand.
Yeah. Again, that's a prime example of us coming at it from a little different angles.
Yeah.
I take people into consideration too, but I'm a little more standoffish. Not suspect maybe.
It's actually a perfect word.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that seems a little sus. What are they getting at?
Yes, that's pretty accurate.
I can warm up a little bit. Yeah. Anyway. Should we wrap it up?
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations?
Let me dig into it.
Yeah. What do you got?
So I'm going to recommend the Netflix series Queen Charlotte. It is a spin-off, or it's actually a prequel to Bridgerton. I'm going to shout out that one.
Right.
Fantastic. What about you?
The Bear.
Oh, yeah.
We started watching the 3rd season.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why I was thinking of like these things as recipes and ingredients.
Maybe.
Huh, I wonder. Yeah, it's a good show. I don't want to go watch another episode.
I was just going to ask you, can we watch an episode tonight?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Cool. Let's get out of here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah. I think you and I have tendencies that don't always match up. Like, I think you'd rather be out having more people around, and I tend to want less people around and at home.
It's true.
But being able to go in between both, I think that makes for not balance, but better maybe. Not sure what I'm trying to say there.